The following program contains coarse language.
Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander viewers are advised that the following program contains images and voices of people who have died.
It happened just after sunrise in Alice Springs on July the 25th, 2009, almost exactly 1 year ago. A local couple who drove up Anzac Hill saw the events unfold at a distance below them. They had parked to drink a coffee and watched the sun light up the town and saw instead an Aboriginal man being killed by a group of youths travelling in a white twin-cab ute. Deb Clark saw the victim walking along the road.
I just happened to notice a fellow walking along the road thinking, nice time to be out for a walk. Saw a car come up shortly thereafter, I guess. Went past, not very far past, did a big U-ey, loud, screechy noise, came back, aimed for the fellow.
I saw these guys hop out this four-wheel drive twin cab and race towards the sort of a guy walking, and then all of a sudden they started to belt into him and kick and the likes.
I saw a couple of kicks, which is when I actually sort of turned to Matt and said, oh, I think this is blowing into something not pleasant, not good.
And then they just drove off.
They could see no movement from the man who'd been bashed, so they drove down to check that he was okay. Another car had driven past him, assuming just that he was drunk. The couple pulled up beside him.
When we got there, we could just see a body laying there with lots of blood and the likes.
Obviously, he was in a bad way. Actually, I thought immediately that he was dead because I could see that his eyes were glassy and he wasn't breathing. There was a patch of skin showing here on his midsection, I guess, and I could see that there was no rise and fall. And there was also, obviously, a wound on his head. And by this stage, Matt was already on the phone calling the police.
Police closed Schwartz Crescent at 8 o'clock this morning after the Aboriginal man's body was found. They're not commenting on his injuries or how he died.
It is highly unusual. There's no information to lead up as to why this has occurred.
The dead man on the road was Donnie Ryder, 33 years old, a trainee park ranger. For cultural reasons, he's now called Kumanjai Ryder. The police said nothing about the suspected killers, but the town was soon talking.
To put it into blunt terms, we all felt that they must have been white straight away.
There were young men involved. First I thought 2, but then the number was 5, and I was just struck with disbelief.
All 5 were young and local lads who'd grown up in Alice Springs. Glenn Swain was one of them.
Glenn, were you provoked at all to do this attack?
Not in any way. I've got my own brain, make my own decision.
What are the implications if it's 5 white guys and the man who dies is an Aboriginal man in this town?
Huge, huge. I mean, once the arrests were made, you got a sense that Alice Springs spoke about nothing else.
It was such a dog act.
Tonight, Four Corners tells the story of the killing of Kumanjai Ryder. It's a long way from Alice Springs to the township of Berowra, 300 kilometres northwest of Sydney. Glenn Swain's parents moved to this house 2 years ago, but he stayed back in Alice Springs.
Hello? Yes. Okay, thank you.
His mother, Heather Swain, is waiting to accept a call from her son, now serving 3.5 years in Alice Springs jail for the killing of Kumanjayi Ryder.
Hello. Good, how are you?
His stepfather was a prison officer at the jail for 7 years. His mother still struggles with what her son has done.
Yep. Glenn is a lovely-natured boy. He was always a quiet child, just entertained himself and respected other people. He was caring, very caring. His grandmother, he cared a lot for his nan. He's not real well at the moment. And, yeah, he was great.
Had he sorted out what he wanted to do?
Took him a while to do that, but then he finally got his traineeship in pest control. Loved it. Went great guns. Did his course in no time, really settled down. It was going great until July last year.
Glenn Swain phoned his mother after he'd been arrested.
I was shitting myself. Yeah. When were you guys going to catch up with us?
He tried to break the bad news gently.
Don't stress, Mum. Exact words, don't stress, Mum, but I've been charged with murder. Imagine my reaction. Yeah, it's pretty hard. It's pretty hard.
Did he go on to tell you about what the circumstances
were? He
were?
said, don't worry about it. Don't believe everything you heard. I hadn't heard anything. I didn't know what to think. I thought Glenn wouldn't go in bed with someone. They might punch around with their mates, but he'd never cause an injury to anyone. He wasn't that type of person, and we always taught him that if someone was down, you don't kick them while they're down. You at least give them the chance to stand up and have a go back.
Kumanjayi Ryder's mother lives here in Alice Springs. He was the 5th of her 9 children. Therese Ryder is a highly regarded watercolour landscape artist. She's what art dealers describe as collectible. She was painting when the police came to tell her that her son's body had been found. The officer who came was a friend.
I started singing out. I started screaming. I said, no, it's not true. It has to be someone else. This is not true. Started crying. And he comforted me and said,
it just cut through us. It was very powerful in itself, the way we got the news.
He just started a new job as a ranger out in his grandfather's country, and he would have been really happy out there. We were just ready to settle down. I've travelled around a lot and done a lot of things in my life, and he was my man, and we were just ready to settle down. We just got our own place and moved in, and we're going to settle down last year, start a family and that, but that never happened.
This is what happened instead. It was a Friday night and 5 friends went out on the town. Glenn Swain, Anton Cloden, Tim Hurd, Scott Doody and Josh Spears were all up for a big night. They went out to Lassiter's casino to party and didn't leave till 6 a.m. All except Anton Cloden, the designated driver, agreed they'd consumed a large amount of alcohol. Glenn Swain drank a full bottle of rum and topped it up with beer.
Did anyone, were you forced to become intoxicated that night? No. Okay. So whose choice was it to drink?
Talk to me about the drinking in Alice.
Plenty. That's all people do. There's nothing else to do. Well, there is other things to do. There's adventure, but people choose to drink. It's a very drinking place.
Kumanjayi Ryder had also been drinking that night, and also at Lassiter's casino. When he made his way back, drunk, to his girlfriend's house in the early hours of the morning, they had an argument and he left for a smoke down the Todd River bed. Do you blame yourself?
Yeah.
Are you worried that the family blames you?
That's the Aboriginal way, you know. I understand why they blame me.
The young men were not yet ready to go home. They wanted more fun. Anton Cloden was driving. Sometime before 7 a.m, he turned the Toyota Hilux into the dry Todd River bed, heading for the Alice Springs telegraph station. Everyone in Alice knows that Aboriginal people sleep and camp in the riverbed. It's been like this for years.
Some because there's no housing available in Alice Springs, obviously, so there's a housing shortfall. Some just choose to live that way. That's how they like to live. They like to live outdoor and they like to camp in the river.
Matt Day often walks his dog early in the morning along by the riverbed. On that morning in July, he saw the Toyota speeding towards a group of Aboriginal campers. He would become an important witness.
It just astounded me that this car really did seem to be aiming at them. It wasn't by accident that they were moving in that direction. They could have gone around the people. There's plenty of space. They were aiming at them, and it was like they were making them scatter like a bunch of birds, you know, like a flock of galahs on the road as you drive through them. These people had to get up and move quickly, and there was an old fella there who had to get up, and I don't think he would have wanted to get up too quickly. He was, you know, an old bloke.
Tony
Cuccelli, the old bloke, would later give evidence that the Toyota had just narrowly missed hitting him. It had then turned around and on return drove right over his swag and through the group again. A group that included Kumanjayi Ryder.
When I got over there, I realised that I knew a guy over there, and it was Kumanjayi Ryder, and he was really angry that the car had been travelling up and down the river, terrorising people, and he'd explained that it had, you know, aimed at a couple of other old blokes that were further down the river. And you know, actually I asked him if he had seen who was driving, if they'd seen a number plate, and no one had seen the number plate, but he described the driver as a white racist bastard. And then he was very angry, and then he apologised straight away to me and said, "Oh, sorry, you know." And I said, no, you know, and I think he was apologising because he just, you know, described this guy by the colour of his skin, and that I wear the same colour skin.
They need to run over us with a white dude. Twin cap, white dude. I can show you the story. You know where's the riverside is, and there's a bridges, and there's some camps right here.
Maureen Walker gave evidence as well.
The car came towards my camp. And you know what they told me? You smell like the Stott River. Do you believe me or what?
Did you hear that in the court?
Yes, I did hear that. But it's both ways. It's not just you white so-and-so, it's not just you black so-and-so, it's both ways.
Do you have any questions for us before we begin? No. Constable Kingston, do you have any questions before we begin? No questions. All right. Jump in the front seat. This is good. Locked us in.
Glenn Swain would later reenact his account of what happened that morning. It's 2 days after Swain's arrest, so he's in cuffs. He was the only one of the 5 men to assist the police.
And this appears to be tracks that we took, from what I recall. That camp was just there where that little fire thing is. Probably not till about here that we veered off a little bit. And yeah, we saw the few occupants of the camp get up and run away. So obviously feared for what could happen. Anton was driving, so.
I thought it was a law to say they weren't allowed to camp in the riverbed after 6 p.m. How come nothing's ever said about that?
At around 7:10, the youths dropped back to the house that Glenn Swain shared with Tim Hurd.
Just where that big gum tree is on its own. Then myself and Tim Hurd got out.
They collected more alcohol and Hurd picked up a replica gun, a Magnum. As they drove towards the riverbed, he fired it.
It was somewhere on this stretch of road that Tim had let off one of the fire, or a round from the replica Magnum, making the sound that it does, like like a normal gun would make.
That shocked me. Yeah. I suppose, yeah. Why did they go back and get that? I asked that question, but I mean, I suppose I'd have to ask Timmy that.
The sound of a gunshot made Jared Ewan look out his window. He lives just near the riverbed and saw the white ute.
As I got there, they drove off and turned left. As I went down through the causeway, they pointed something out the window, which looked a bit like a gun to me. They were yelling something at a group of Aboriginals in the river at the same time, and the ute just kept driving off, up round out of sight.
What did you think they were up to?
I thought they were just drunk, driving around after a party or something like that.
Another shot went off near the Aboriginal camp.
Once that round went off, we could still see the camp over there. They all jumped up and started running. Obviously heard the shot and freaked out, as you would. So then we proceeded to go through the causeway. At this point there, we'd seen someone standing in just over the centre white line there, up a bit further.
That someone was Kumanjay Ryder, walking to his uncle's place. As the Toyota passed him, who knows if he recognised the ute from earlier in the riverbed, but he threw a bottle which smashed on the side of the car. Swain thought it was a rock.
Yeah, we heard it hit the car. It was still in motion at that point. Yep. Come just over this rise. That's where Anton was on the brakes, probably around, somewhere around here.
Yep.
Braked. Yeah, braked and done the U-bolt.
Anton Cloden drove the ute so close up to Ryder that Ryder reached out and held the bull bar.
At that point, Tim opened his door and the fellow through the rock proceeded to start running. I jumped out. The fellow ran past. Tim was following him. I was probably about a metre or two behind Tim. Sort of got me to run. Yeah, it's just sort of a light jog.
The police put a mannequin's torso on the side of the road to represent Mr Ryder.
It was somewhere around here that the person that threw the rock was sort of stumbling, fell over. I was right behind Tim. By the time I had approached, I saw Tim had made contact with one foot. I then, got as close as what Tim was to the fellow that was on the ground. At that point, he was hands over his face. I was probably about here. I then laid 2 boots in, like so, shuffled around, sort of looked up and saw there was a car just coming this way.
They chased my son down as if he was an animal.
I think we can probably want to hold the back of the head a bit.
Glenn Swain went on to show the police the force he had used as he'd kicked Mr Ryder twice in the head.
Slow up.
Tim Hurd kicked Ryder once, and Joshua Spears struck him over the back of his head with a cider stubby bottle. Scott Doody was beside them, but struck no blows, and Anton Cloden was moving the car. One of the offenders was heard to say, "Don't fuck with us." These may well have been the last words that Mr Ryder heard.
At that point, I saw that he wasn't moving too good. As I stated in my statement, that it was like a sort of a ragdoll type effect, with no sort of muscle controlling however he was, so he appeared to be unconscious. And that's why like I said, looked up and said, let's go, let's go, let's go. And like I said, at that point, Anton was pretty well right for the car right here, yep.
According to Glenn Swain, they drove off quickly, heading first to Josh Spears' mother's place as they were out of alcohol. Josh Spears stayed there, and the other 4 headed back to the house that was shared by Glenn Swain and Tim Hurd. They continued drinking.
I had messaged a few of my mates saying come round for a drink, as they weren't there the night before. I continued drinking there till about lunchtime, I think it was. And I went to Todd Tavern Bottle after we left home, grabbed my half carton and then went to Jason Wall's house over at Northside.
At midday, the police made it public that a body had been found. At the Ryder's family request, it was 5 days before they released his name.
I didn't find out until I saw the picture in the paper on the Friday when they had the wanted picture, and then they had a picture of Kumanjay. And I broke down into tears. I couldn't believe it, because I'd spent that whole week and I'd said to the police, you need to find Kumanjay, because he saw the driver. He saw the vehicle. You know, you need to speak to that guy, and if I see him around town, I'll get him to come and talk to you. Not knowing that he was gone already. He was already dead.
Another of the witnesses was not that surprised.
Not much, because if you live here, you know, you read about Aboriginals, you know, being found dead at least once a month, whether it be through, you know, they fall out of the back of the ute, they have a fight on one of the communities, something like that. But the 5 white local guys, you know, it's normally not white locals fighting with them that does it, so I was a bit surprised then, I suppose, yeah.
Did you know any of the boys involved?
I knew one of them, yep, by name. The others, I'd heard of them.
And do you understand? Can you give us any understanding about what might have motivated them?
Honestly, I think what would have motivated them would have been, you know, if they were drunk, the alcohol, and maybe, you know, something had happened earlier. They were angry from that. And just basically the way you get treated by Aboriginals in town, you know. They supposedly, that guy threw a bottle at the ute I honestly think if I was the one there throwing a bottle at the ute, they'd have got out and done the same to me. But, you know, the 5 white young guys just sick of taking crap from Aboriginals.
They were just out for sort of, you know, some nasty fun, from what I can see. But I don't know if it was a racial intended thing from I would like to believe not, but certainly the town has a lot of problems in that regard.
The hardest thing is knowing that this could happen in this town, in this community. Not only that, but they to find out that they were local young men was very, very distressing.
Alice Springs has a population of around 27,000. It's small enough for most folk to know and be friends with some of the 6 families involved, black and white. Around 20% of the people who live in Alice are Aboriginal, and the interface between white and black is a significant source of the wealth and charm of the town, the tourism, the art and the service hub industries. But it's also a source of racial tension that locals are often reluctant to discuss and confront. The Ryder case forced these issues uncomfortably into the open.
I started to think, what have we become, you know? What's the community come to?
It's a place that you can only feel for yourself. Everyone has their own opinion on things, and yeah, it's just the way that they just hang around the town and just make it so, oh, what is it? What's the word for it? Just not comfortable, because they're there all the time. You walk past them, you don't know how they're going to react. Most of the time they're good, but you just don't know if that person had been drinking 24/7, how they're going to react. Are they going to get stuck into you, or you are scared.
As soon as it was public the offenders were white, the Alice Springs Police issued a media statement saying it is inappropriate to speculate on the motive. But Acting Police Commander Kim Davies would later do precisely that, saying racism was not a motive.
It just so happened that Mr Ryder was an Aboriginal person and the people driving the vehicle were white people. We see a lot of violent incidents in Alice Springs, and we would be at pains to suggest that they're not racially motivated.
One of the reasons they would have been at pains to distance themselves from the racial aspect would have been to keep things calm.
Gary Wasserman is the editor of the local paper.
Did most people in the town see it as a racist attack?
I would imagine that, yes, I would imagine that anybody who didn't see it that way would have been, for reasons best known to themselves, would have been denying it to themselves.
What do you think about that?
I knew straight out they done it because he was an Aboriginal. They wouldn't have done that if they seen a white fellow walking down the road. They wouldn't have done it because he was an Aboriginal man walking down the road on his own with no one else around. That's when they did a Huey, came back and got stuck into him.
Within a week of the death, the 5 young men were arrested. They were all charged with murder and recklessly endangering the lives of the campers in the riverbed. Glenn Swain, along with Anton Cloden, initially told police they were out of town that night. CCTV footage proved they were lying.
Read what had happened to him. Freaking out about it. That's what we come up with something.
Did you ever talk to Glenn about why he initially gave a false account to the police?
Scared. He was scared.
Off to Adelaide, are you?
Going to Adelaide on Monday.
Yeah?
Monday.
I hope that goes well for you.
Yeah.
Selwyn Cloden is Anton Cloden's father. His son drove the white ute. He and his wife Ruth have been living at the Hermansburg community, 125 kilometres out of Alice, for the past 8 years. He runs the store and she's been teaching at remote community schools. He sees nothing extraordinary about the events last July.
What did you think when you saw specifically what happened that night?
I guess about a few young fellas going for a drive down the river. I thought, well, you know, that's quite a regular occurrence for young people in this vicinity. Sort of nothing extraordinary about that at all. And just 5 fellas going for a drive up the river.
Somebody was assaulted and somebody did die.
Yeah, but that wasn't the intent of anything there.
As the court case started, there was extra police security, just in case tension erupted. It remained quiet.
As a family member, we remember a young man full of compassion, love.
Early on, the Ryder family made a public appeal for calm.
The family wrote a statement and called for calm.
Yeah.
Tell me why.
Because my family is a quiet family. We're a Catholic family. We're not a violent family. Compared to the other Aboriginal families in other communities around Alice Springs.
There's, you know, black against white, white against black. And I don't think we needed that. We needed to get to the truth of what happened and to allow this process with the courts to go through first to find the answers. And that's why we called for calm.
It can sound a little bit lightweight, an appeal for calm, but it's huge. It's huge, and I think it was very necessary, and I think it was significant. And I think it made a difference in terms of calm prevailing at the end.
Over the months that followed, none of the 5 young men, all held in custody, applied for bail. Some of their parents were worried about payback from the Ryder family.
I was glad that he was locked away. It sounds horrible, but I knew he'd be safer there. But yeah, Amanda, I didn't want her to go out clubbing or anything like that because I didn't know if the family would do payback, as they do.
But were there any threats?
No.
There was no reason for fear. I mean, that's their opinions. But for us, we didn't have any ideas for payback or didn't even ask for it. It didn't even cross our mind.
Dr. Terence Sinton conducted the autopsy on Mr. Ryder's body. He told the committal hearing the cause of death was hemorrhaging as a result of blunt head trauma. This could have been from the kicks, the blow from the bottle, or even the fall to the ground, he couldn't say. But he did say that it was highly likely that Mr. Ryder had a pre-existing aneurysm, a balloon-like swelling of a blood vessel at the base of his brain, making him more vulnerable to a lethal assault.
But even with an aneurysm, you can live till you're 90 years old. And who knows how long that assault would have gone on if he hadn't have stopped moving. If he had have kept moving, how long they would have kept kicking him for. Till one of them realised that something was wrong.
But was there an intention to kill?
Glenn, did you, did you intend to kill Johnny Ryder?
No way. I would never do that. Intentionally do that to anyone.
They're not remorseful for what's happened. they're sorry for themselves, their mothers are sorry that their sons are locked up.
At the end of the day, all 5 men were committed to stand trial for murder and reckless endangerment of life. But this would change. By the time of the Supreme Court hearing in April this year, the murder charges were dropped. The prosecutor did not assert that any of the 5 men had an intention to kill. They all pleaded guilty to the lesser charge of manslaughter. The families came to hear how long they would spend in jail. Over the past 10 months, Therese Ryder had sat outside the court. For the first time, she went inside.
The side door opened and 2 policemen walked in. And after them were these 5 fellas walked into the courtroom. And they was all dressed up, neatly dressed with ties, jackets. And I felt hatred inside me. And I felt no good. I burst out crying. And I said to Jade and Susan, I can't bear this. I want to go outside. When I got up, I said out, I screamed out loud. I said to them, you all look good on the outside, but inside there's racism straight out. And I walked out.
The circumstances have justifiably given rise to a suspicion that the killing was racially motivated.
Back inside, the Chief Justice of the Northern Territory cautiously approached the question of racism, starting with Anton Cloden driving at the campers.
I am satisfied that there were racial elements in the earlier events and that a tone or atmosphere was set of antagonism towards and harassment of Aboriginal persons that is likely to have influenced the later conduct of all offenders.
The later conduct being the killing.
And the actions of some offenders in kicking and striking the deceased while he was on the ground were influenced, at least to some degree, by the fact that the deceased was an Aboriginal person. Each of you is convicted of the crime of manslaughter.
And then the sentences. Scott Doody, who didn't strike a blow and didn't drive the car, 4 years, but all bar 12 months suspended. He'll be out next month. Anton Cloden, Timothy Hurd and Joshua Spears, 6 years with a non-parole period of 4. Glenn Swain, 5 years and 6 months with a non-parole period of 3.5. 6 months less because he cooperated with the police.
I was quite relieved. I thought he'd get a lot longer. I mean, yes, he did do the wrong thing. He should get time. That sounds nasty of a mother, but he did do the wrong thing. He should serve time.
I wanted those boys to be in prison for life, or maybe 20, 30 years in prison for what they did. They cut short my son's life, and they're still around today. And where's my son?
Selwyn Cloden and his wife Ruth are on their way to visit their son in the Alice Springs jail. They feel his sentence, a minimum of 4 years, is excessive, and Anton Cloden is appealing it. Cloden's behaviour was judged to have encouraged the assault, and he was also guilty of endangering the life of a camper. His father rejects the judge's finding that there was a racial element to his son's crimes.
I just thought, well, it's a comment made by someone who doesn't know him.
it was made as a result of his actions.
It was perceived that it was a racial action by certain people. But I don't believe Anton had any racial issues in regard to that.
He was the one driving the car. He was the one that pointed the car in the direction that it went. He was the one that entered the riverbed. He was the one that drove at the campers. He was the one that stopped and did a U-turn when he saw my man. The others wouldn't have been able to kick him or punch him either if he wasn't the one driving the car.
First on the scene again.
The Clodens are also angry about the conditions in the jail. All 5 convicted of the Ryder killing are held here on protection in high security. Correctional Services says they're locked in their cells for around 18 hours a day. Selwyn Cloden says it's for longer than that.
To be locked in a room about half the size of this room for 22 hours a day, and they've been like that for the last 10 months, is just extraordinary that happens.
In case there is a payback from the Indigenous, yeah, I expect that's the only reason. They'd just wait until everything calms down a bit, until it blows over.
When they're taunted by things like, we're effing going to kill your sister and we know where your mother lives and we're going to effing get her as well, that would have to be taken as some sort of a threat, I would assume. Yeah.
And it's best that they're in protection?
Yeah. Because my family would never do that. We're an Aboriginal family. We got our culture, but we wouldn't be the ones, no. We would be shoved aside from all the other members of the family from other communities that carry on this culture.
And they might harm them?
Yes.
The realisation of the enormity of the harm he has done is clear as Glenn Swain struggles to cope with what he will live with for the rest of his life.
Do you intend to cause harm to Donnie Ryder?
I didn't even want to see him the way I did see him. Unconscious. From what I saw, like, he was unconscious, darkened. It was pictured every single day.
But he is still alive. His victim is dead. Kumanjayi Ryder's family have only memories of the man they have lost.
Where's my son? My son had a future. And he didn't get the chance to have that future.
He was the one that made you laugh.
Yeah, he'd always dance and sing to the same country songs, sing them over and over.
You'll go down as my greatest memory. The day's a day I always pray I never live to see. For you built me up and tore it down now you're leaving me, but you go down as my greatest memory.
You can see extended interviews with key participants in tonight's programme at the Four Corners website. Just go to abc.net.au/4corners.